mentioned that hospitals are closing. Did you say the Atlanta Medical Center is also closing? I mean,
Yes.
What does this mean for Georgians? This can't be good.
Okay, so think about Los Angeles, or let's do South Carolina. South Carolina has fewer than 5 million people. The city of Charleston has 3 level 1 trauma centers. What that means is if you're in a major car accident, if you have a major traumatic illness, if you need the top people, they've got 3 hospitals that are qualified as level 1 trauma centers for a state of 5 million people, and their capital city has 3 of them, okay? The state of Georgia only has 5 level 1 trauma centers. And because we're losing the Atlanta Medical Center, we're going to be down to 4. But the problem is half of Georgia's population lives in metropolitan Atlanta. Okay? 5.7 million people. We're only going to have 1 left because the other ones are here. There's one in Augusta, one in Savannah, one in Macon. We had 2 in Atlanta, and we're losing 1 of them. And so that means if you are near the Tennessee border and you get into an accident and you need Grady Hospital, which is the only one left, Grady has been on what they call diversion, meaning that they can't accept ambulances pretty much every day for the last few years. They are always sending ambulances other places, but they can't send them away. If it's a trauma, you can only go to certain hospitals. You've got to go from the Tennessee border to Macon, Georgia. That's 85 miles from Atlanta.
So if you,
so it's as absurd as it sounds.
But how are Georgians accepting this? I mean,
because he lies. So he lied and said that he didn't have any control over this, that he didn't know it was happening. That is absolutely untrue. Now, Wellstar has closed down 2 hospitals. They closed down the emergency room in South Fulton, so it's already impacting Black and brown people south of I-20. But this is downtown Atlanta. This is in Martin Luther King Jr.'s backyard. Okay? We know that if we had expanded Medicaid, we would have gotten $12 billion into the state. And here's what that looks like. That means that of the 100,000 patients that Atlanta Medical Center saw this past year who were indigent or charity cases, many of them would have had an insurance card. And so instead of using the hospital as their primary care physician, they could have gone to see a different doctor. That means you're not paying for them to come to an emergency room. They're getting to see a regular doctor. On top of that, because we won't expand Medicaid, we're forfeiting money that we're entitled to pay for those patients. And it's part of a larger system. And so Brian Kemp says, well, it's a failed system. It's not failed. For 38 states, it has worked perfectly. They've gotten more money. They've seen better health outcomes. They've seen lower costs. It has worked it worked in Indiana. If Mike Pence and I agree about something, it must be the right thing to do.
Right. Yes. I mean, so talk to me a little bit about becoming Georgia's governor. I mean, I feel like this is a huge job now, made harder by someone who didn't do the job, who hasn't been doing the job, who has sort of been scratching his butt and, saying no to everything. What is exciting to you about taking this job on? I mean, this is huge.
I was actually interviewed yesterday by a kid with the Scholastic Press, and she asked me the same question. And my basic answer for her, I think, is the best answer. I want to help people. I grew up poor. I grew up poor in Mississippi. I mean, we do that really well. We know how poverty works really well there. And for me, what was the most important part of how I grew up was that my parents said no matter how little we had, there was someone with less. Your job is to serve that person.
Right.
But now I've actually gotten a chance to experience what it feels like to have more. Right. I get to take my dad to a doctor when he's sick. We didn't go to the doctor when we were kids. Yeah. I get to help my niece when she needs help. I get to be able to be there for my nieces and my nephews. I have friends and family members who are doing better because they got an education. Mm-hmm. I've gotten to the middle class. I've gotten to reach above the middle class. And I don't want to be there alone. I want the people in the middle class to be able to reach higher. And I want folks who only dream about it to get there. And that's what a governor can do. By investing in education, Like, this isn't just to do a nice thing to say. Public education saved my life. It gave me parents who knew that they were going to have to find the poor street on the middle class side of town to get me zoned into the good school, to get me to Spelman College and University of Texas and Yale Law School. It made my life different. It made my current opportunities possible. I want that for every young person in Georgia. I want health care. I want housing. My parents were able to keep a roof over our heads, but they had to pray hard many times to make that so. But I also want people to make a good living. I got to be an entrepreneur. I got to start my own business. I know that we had to shut down one of our businesses because we couldn't get a loan because my business partner is a woman. I'm a black woman. She was a white woman. And while we hoped that the race stuff would level out, being a woman still didn't help us out. So even though we had an invoice that was worth twice what we needed to borrow, no one would loan us the money. So we created a company to do that, to give people the money they needed. But the governor should be making it more possible for small businesses to thrive. And I asked him about this on Monday, especially for black and brown owned businesses. I said, what's your specific plan? And he talked about, I made them go back to work during COVID, even though I made it illegal to sue your employer if they didn't provide you with protection. He leaves that part of the story out, that he passed a law to specifically prohibit employees from suing their employers if they were not protected during COVID. I want us to say that we will invest in small businesses, that they'll get access to contracts. And specifically, I like to say it this way. I want to be the Maynard Jackson for the state of Georgia, where we get contracts regardless of your race, regardless of your region. We are going to build thousandaires and millionaires in the state of Georgia because we're going to spend the money we've got helping the people we have do the best they can. That's why I want to be the governor of Georgia.
Well, the thing that I'm hearing is it's kind of remarkable. So you're talking to folks who don't have, and you're saying we could have. If you make me governor, I will make sure, because the money is sitting there. We don't have to go to the rich people and say we need your money. Money is there to make this magic happen for all Georgians.
Yes.
For every Georgian sitting there. I mean, do you believe that even though we know there's been so much gerrymandering, that there is a way forward? Does it require that every Georgian come out and vote and make sure that they recognize their place in the state of Georgia and why they're entitled to have a governor that actually cares about them, regardless of race, creed, color, everything, gender? I mean, do you think there's a way to do this throughout this gerrymander? Girl, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so let's understand what part of the challenge is. That we know what the presidency does. They spend billions of dollars telling us what the president is, what the president does, how powerful the president is. And we usually know about mayors because they happen usually in odd numbered years, and they're the closest people to the people. You know that politician has to walk down your street. He might be in your grocery store. She might be in your laundromat. So you know who the mayor is. The governors are the least understood and most powerful jobs we have because they're the intercessor between the presidency and the mayors. When the money comes from the federal government, when you hear about all those billions of dollars that Congress has given to the states, who do you think decides how it gets to the cities? It's the governor. And what's happened for 20 years in Georgia is that we've been told we don't have enough. And they have trained us to believe we don't deserve more. So when I say, here's all the things we could do, people, it's not that they don't want it. They don't believe they can have it.
Yeah.
Because they've been trained to think, if that were true, we would have already had it. No. The people you've had for the last 20 years don't want you to believe you can we've been trained into this poverty of imagination. Where we don't believe or imagine that we are entitled to more. And it's part of this larger narrative that conservatives have pushed that says that if it were really possible, if it really possible, we would have done it already. No. They didn't do it on purpose. And then they try to tell us all the reasons we can't. Well, you can't have health care because it might not work. Well, it's worked now for 10 years in 38 states.
Right.
Well, we can't do anything about housing because investors might get angry. Well, Brian Kemp makes his money in real estate, so I'm not going to take his word for it.
Okay.
We can't have the right to control our bodies because, well, that's just not, it's healthcare. I'm going to talk to a doctor, not a politician who doesn't understand biology.
Yeah.
And more than anything, I want someone who has the job, who's actually lived a real life. I talked on Monday about my brothers. I've got a brother who has committed crimes.
Mm-hmm.
I want law enforcement to show up to protect the people that he victimized.
Yes.
But I also know that when he committed those crimes, he didn't lose his humanity when he lost his freedom. And so we should not have gangs running our prisons because we can't get enough correctional officers in there.
Right.
But I have another brother who was a social worker, and the number of times he got pulled over for driving while black.
Mm.
Brian Kemp has never had to think about what does it mean to have your black brother terrified for his life because he's in the wrong part of town because he's doing the right kind of work.
Right.
If you don't have to think about that, then you don't think you have to do anything about that.
Right.
And that's why he is so comfortable using slogans to describe what he's not going to do and to avoid conversations about what needs to be done. I don't want to take anyone's power. I don't want to take anyone's money. And we can get there because we've got enough people in this state. We've got all the people we need. They just have to believe that they have the power to change things. And I promise you, if they didn't think you had the power, they wouldn't be working so hard to make you not trust me and not vote for me.
Well, I find that interesting. What did he call you, an angry black woman? Is that I find that funny because you should be angry. You're sitting on the possibility, and this guy's saying no, not for you. So you should be angry. Everybody who's watching this should be angry. You discover suddenly that there is money that is not going to require taxes to go up, money for all kinds of people, for all kinds of things, and it's there. And someone has told you for all this time, you're not going to get it because they're concerned that they're going to hurt somebody else's feelings. But there's more of you, Georgia. There's a whole bunch of y'all. He's hurt your feelings. You know, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Native American. He's hurting your feelings by telling you your state is not going to look out for you. You pay taxes, you scrounge, you get everything you need to do your part. You need a governor who's going to do their part. So people can vote early at any location in your county. Is that right?
So in the state of Georgia, we have 3 weeks of early voting. It started Monday. We are so excited because people are turning out in record numbers, but we need them to sustain. We can't have an early start and then slow down. We've got to keep it going. So if you go to stacyabrams.com/voting, we'll tell you exactly where you can go in your county. Every county has early voting, every single one. If you live in the most populous counties, organizations have fought really hard to make sure you've got multiple places to go. But I want to go back to something you just said about being angry. Mm-hmm. So I was very calm and measured on that stage.
Yes, you were.
He called me an angry black woman. He called me angry and mad, I think. Yeah. And then just today, George Will wrote a piece in the Washington Post about my anger management problem. I've been accused of many things in my life, but nobody's ever seen me that mad. I mean, certainly no one in public life. Because one, as women, we don't have the luxury of that kind of high emotion. But more importantly, I'm rarely mad. I'm usually just very determined. But what they know they're doing is it's a dog whistle. Actually, it's not even a dog whistle anymore. It's a megaphone now. I am so close. They're using the megaphone to pull out every racist and sexist trope they can. Because they've also been darkening my skin in advertisements. And I don't know if you've ever experienced anything, if you've ever had any experience with racism or sexism. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Well, I've had many run-ins with racists, and you know, generally, I just, people come up and they yell at me all the time about the things I say, and I say to you, prove me wrong. Show me where I'm wrong in what I'm saying, and this is what I'll invite George Will to do. Prove you wrong. Okay? You say I'm angry. Okay? Maybe to you, this is what anger looks like, because people are used to people moving to the side and going, yes, yes, you're right. But women are not having this crap. We're not taking it. We don't like it. We don't like the way you're talking to us. Black women don't like it. White women don't like it. Asian women don't like it. Hispanic women don't like it. We don't like it. We don't like how you talk to our families. We don't like how you talk about our children. We don't like it. So you can call me an incredibly annoyed Black woman. Incredibly annoyed, because I don't understand why I have to explain to you how my body works, and then you tell me it doesn't work that way. I don't understand why you have to explain to me why you have a problem with American history. American history. I just made a movie called Till about Emmett Till, and it is insane to me when you watch what systemic racism looks like, and then you realize that everyone is now starting to suffer from this, whether you're LGBTQ, whether you're Asian, whether you're white and a woman, whether it doesn't matter. Everyone is starting to be affected by what we call systemic racism. I don't know what to call it when that trope goes out and starts to encompass everyone. So tell me, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's systemic. It's systemic oppression and erosion of civil liberties and civil rights, and racism has been the central fulcrum for society's understanding of the denial of civil rights. But that denial of civil rights and civil liberties has been pervasive for a very long time. It's why women didn't get the right to vote until the 19th Amendment. It's why Native Americans weren't citizens of this country until the 20th century. It's why Chinese Americans are the only class of Americans ever specifically excluded by law from immigration to the United States. It's why Latinos had to be pulled into the Voting Rights Act in 1975, because the man who went on to become the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, William Rehnquist, was using literacy tests to deny them access to the right to vote. And so what you're speaking to, and what people are becoming more aware of, but perhaps too late, is that right now we are at war with the Supreme Court over the protection of our civil rights and civil liberties. Right. What Clarence Thomas very clearly laid out for us in his diatribe about why the Dobbs decision was right. He said he was coming after Dobbs because he wanted to eliminate the right to an abortion. But he also said he was coming after Griswold. He was coming after Obergefell. He's coming after all of these cases that protect our civil rights and our civil liberties. And governors matter, because when those rights are no longer protected at the federal level, it's left to governors to determine if those rights will be protected at the state level. And in Georgia, this should be terrifying, because right now Brian Kemp agrees with Clarence Thomas on every single thing. He agreed with him about Roe v. Wade. He agrees with him about Obergefell. Brian Kemp does not believe in marriage equality. He agrees with him about what's called 303 creative. This is a case that's in front of the Supreme Court this year, right now, that says that public accommodations law does not cover sexual orientation. Okay, that sounds really vague. Here's what that means. Right now, public accommodations laws are the reason Black people got to sit at lunch counters.
Yes.
When they used to tell us we couldn't sit at a lunch counter, the reason we were able to do so, the reason those protests were necessary, is that public accommodations law says if you are open to the public, you cannot discriminate based on certain characteristics. And one of those characteristics is sexual orientation. That's what the courts have interpreted to mean. Well, 303 creative says that, no, never mind. You can discriminate based on sexual orientation. And when that case is decided, the way we know this 6-3 conservative court is going to decide, what that means is that if you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community in one of 5 states, including Georgia, you can be denied housing, you can get kicked out of a hotel, they can see you in a restaurant with your partner and your child and say, we don't serve your kind here. You can be denied when you go into a grocery store, they can tell you we're not going to serve you here. That's what that law means. And Brian Kemp believes in what's called RFRA, religious freedom. That means that he agrees that businesses should be allowed to discriminate against you and decide not to serve you because you violate their ideological or religious beliefs. That's what's at stake here.
Yes.
There's also the Merrill case, which is going to eliminate the very last remaining pillar of the Voting Rights Act. Brian Kemp doesn't agree with it. He doesn't agree with the Voting Rights Act. That's why he has been such an architect of voter suppression. And then the most terrifying thing is the Moore decision. Moore is in front of the Supreme Court, and that's going to say that any election law that the states create, that you can no longer sue about those laws in state court. Well, I just mentioned they're going to get rid of the Voting Rights Act, right? So if you can't go to the federal court and you can't go to the state court, where do you go if somebody's discriminating against your right to participate in democracy? You have nowhere to go. That's their intention, and Brian Kemp is one of their leading architects. If you care about your civil rights and civil liberties, you may think they're coming after women or black people or brown people right now, but they're coming after you next.
Everybody. Yeah, they're coming after everybody. And religious freedom, we all are entitled to religious freedom. It's not just one group's religious freedom. Yes. Everyone has it. And if you don't like who I am, your religion doesn't, then don't, I don't have to come to your store. But I have the right to have my religious freedom respected the same way everybody else wants their freedoms respected. Tracy, Election Day is November 8th. You're the best person for this job, I think. I mean, I'd rather you just ran for president, but I'll take you as governor first. We'll start here. What is it you want people to know right now as they're trying to make up their minds which way to go?
Number one, that the current governor doesn't care, he won't help, and he spent the last 4 years attacking your freedoms. He has made us less safe. He's made guns more prolific on our streets. He's weakened gun laws. He's stripped us of our women's bodily autonomy. He's impeded our right to vote. He's refusing to spend money that's already here to help people who need it right now. So that's what we have. And we need to fire him. But the reason to hire me is not just because we're mad at him. I've had a track record and the training to do this job. In the 4 years I didn't have the job, I paid off the medical debts of 68,000 Georgians. I put 151 Wi-Fi devices across the state while we were waiting for him to realize that rural communities don't have broadband. I helped create a business to move money to small businesses so they could get the help they needed during COVID. And that's what I did when I didn't have the job. I want people to have more. I want us to have more money in our pockets, which is why I want to do a stimulus check with that $1 billion, or the $1 billion of the $6 billion. I want to do that in stimulus money, but not to millionaires and billionaires. I want to make sure that we have more opportunity for our kids to go to college, for our families to take vacations, for people to live in housing they can afford. And then I want us to have more freedom in our lives. I want to be Stacey Abrams versus Clarence Thomas, not Brian Kemp and Clarence Thomas. Right. But I need everyone to show up, and we can do this. We know we can do it because we did it in 2021, we did it in 2020, and we got really, really close in 2018. And if we show up this time, not mad, but impassioned and determined, we can win. Because every day between now and November 4th is Election Day. You can go to your county and you can vote. And on Election Day, November 8th, we can win. But that's what I need folks to know.
So is there a way for folks out in the rural areas to ensure that they can get someplace to vote? Because I know a lot of, how can they find the place?
Every single county has early voting. That's part of the law of Georgia. So if you go to stacyabrams.com/voting, you can find your location, or you can call 888-730-5816. So anybody who has friends who don't have the internet, 888-730-5816, or stacyabrams.com/voting. But Whoopi, before we go, I get to do one thing I never get to do with you. I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
So you've had such a spectacular career. You have the EGOT. More importantly, you got to be on Star Trek. But tell me, why are these conversations so important to you? You spent years engaging people at levels and with a depth and with an intensity that you don't have to. You could be doing something else. Why does this matter so much to you?
I think it matters so much to me because I've lived in different places and I've seen how easy it is to dismantle your ability to think for yourself. I've lived in places where you didn't have the right to speak out and say anything. I've been around places where people have lost rights and don't even recognize that the rights are gone. You know, we don't teach civics anymore. So it's one of those things that makes me crazy because I want people to know what their right is, because my grandmother, my family made sure that they took advantage of their ability to direct where they wanted America to go and how they wanted it to be. Listen, this country is never going to be perfect because it's a country filled with lots of different people. But we can do a lot better than we were doing. I mean, all of the things, all the marching that folks did, you know, was to make sure that things like what happened to Emmett Till stopped happening. And yet we find ourselves slipping back. And a lot of the things that rights we fought for, are disappearing. You know, we talk about gay folks getting married and marriage equality, but that's not just marriage equality. Then we have folks who are intermarried with different colors and what happens to all of them? What happens when these rights start to disappear? Everybody's rights start to disappear, and I'm too old to start all over again. You know, people say, "Oh, you're just speaking like you're woke," and I always say, "I was never asleep." This being American, you don't sleep because you always have to make sure for the next group that comes that your shoulders are strong enough to support them as they stand on those shoulders to make the next changes that have to be made. That's how I was raised, and that's why I do what I do.
Well, on that note, Whoopi Goldberg, thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Here's the Thing. I appreciate you so much, and I'm so honored to be your friend.
Ditto. I adore you. Live long and prosper, my dear. Live long and prosper. And, you know, let's tell people to make sure, don't wait to vote. Make your plan today. Get out there and do what you can do, Georgia, because you know what's at stake. And I adore you, Stacy Abrams. And if I could vote in Georgia, I would be voting for you. Big love.
Love you too. Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye.